Our next speaker is amazing. He's an economist, he's young, he has 1 million followers or listeners to his podcast every month, and he's from Lloydminster. Yeah, so it's just proof that social media will work absolutely everywhere, because it's near my hometown in Vermilion, so there are people that will tune in. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm Calgary welcome to Tanner Hnidey. Got your mic over there?
I do. Am I speaking first for a bit?
Oh, you grab it there.
Okay.
Sure. So, Tanner and I, we had an opportunity to talk before. Some of you might have heard us. We did a little pilot. And the fun part about talking with Tanner is that there's always creative ideas. And I don't think anything that we're going to talk about tonight is actually the solution. But we want to present to people viable options and to reduce the fear. That's really the key that we have. So with that, you have a really good presentation up here. I'll let you go for a little bit, and then I'll come back and we'll do some questions.
Perfect. Well, thank you all so much for, can you hear me all quite well? Thank you for having me out this evening. I am so excited to be with all of you. It's my pleasure to come and talk to you tonight about the possibility of an Alberta pension. Of course, it's been titled, What Matters to You? I don't know if they have the first slide. There it is. You can see how it's been designed by myself and my brother. My brother, Hunter, is here. You want to stand up tonight, Hunter? He is, as a matter of fact, he's the brains behind all of this research, and him and I are touring the province right now, hosting lectures that discuss exactly this and how to talk to your neighbors about the pension plan. Because, of course, it's surprising to absolutely none of you to hear that Alberta pays more into federal government programs than what we receive. That's not surprising. It would be surprising if instead we heard that Alberta received more from federal government programs than what we paid into it. But of course, then it wouldn't be a federal government program. I bring that to your attention because the same is true with the Canadian Pension Plan. On the next slide, I discuss Alberta's disproportionate spending. Because I mean this honestly when I say every single year, Alberta sends billions, and I mean billions, more into the pension plan, into the Canadian Pension Plan, compared to what we, Albertans, or seniors in Alberta to be more accurate, receive in return. The first graph on top details that. It shows a variety of years how Alberta has contributed billions more into the pension plan than what it's received. 2.5 billion, 3.5 billion, $3 billion year by year by year by year. And this is not an emerging phenomenon. It has been this way for decades, since the CPP's inception. For most of the CPP's existence, except for a few years, Alberta has paid more into the Canadian Pension Plan than what it's received. As a matter of fact, our payouts have been so generous compared to what we received back that we are now in a position, over this veil of decades, of having given Ottawa, the CPP, a net contribution of $60+ billion. And that's before inflation. Trevor Toome, for example, has estimated that after inflation, our net contribution looks more like $80 billion. But it's really so much higher than that when you think about opportunity cost. What could Alberta have done with that $80 billion that was otherwise shoveled into Ottawa? Think of the wealth that's been lost. Think of the money, think of the investment we could have had that instead was foregone in exchange for this Canadian pension plan. Oh, but the CPP earns 10% rates of return. I had the unfortunate displeasure of listening to Janice Irwin a couple months ago. And she was giving a short talk on now what's formerly Twitter, talking about why Albertans should remain in the CPP, and she says, why would you want to leave the CPP? Why would you want to do so when it's one of the best performing pensions in the entire world? Why would you want to emancipate yourself from all of the benefits that the CPP generates? 10% returns, 10% returns, a 10-year annualized rate of 10%. It's unbelievable. It's incredible. Why would you want to leave? Now, of course, as is so often the case in politics, Miss Irwin and her radical activist friends were telling half-truths and are therefore, or were therefore, telling whole lies. Because although it's true that the Canadian Pension Plan Investing Board, the investments that the Canadian Pension Plan Investing Board makes earns 10% returns over 10 years, that much is accurate. What about you? What do you earn? What are the benefits for you? You see, if you were born in 1905 and you retired in the mid-60s, your rates of return on the Canadian Pension Plan were about 39, 38%. That's incredible. That's miraculous. That's magnificent. That will never manifest in the Canadian Pension Plan ever again. Unbelievable. Now, of course, those people who were born in 1905 are either now dead, or if they're not dead, they're still working in government. So, their returns don't concern us. We're concerned about those who were born in the 60s, in the 50s, in the 70s. What are your returns? Not 39%, not 20%, 2.5%, 3%, 4%, maybe. The older you are, the higher your benefits become. So if you're born in the 50s, early 50s, late 40s, your benefits look more like 4%. For someone like myself who's born in the 90s, my returns on contributions will be maybe 2.5%. But it's so much worse than that when you think about the fact, the disgraceful fact, that the CPP, your CPP payouts, are taxed. That's taxable income. Only government could at first tax you to pay for a program and then give you the benefits back and tax you again. So, although activists say the CPP earns 10%, that has nothing to do with your rates of return. Your rates of return have to do with how long you worked, how wealthy you were while working, how much you made, and the age at which you decide to pull your pension. And then when you do pull your pension, government, in its supreme generosity, decides to tax it. I have one more slide here, a new opportunity. Now I have more slides, but time fails us, so I'm going to stop here. Fact of the matter is, we now have 3 problems just in this short speech that are before us. 1, the first problem, Alberta's disproportionate payments to the CPP. The second problem are dismal returns. They are not the juggernaut returns that activists claim that they are. And third, the fact of the matter that your pension payouts wrongfully are taxed. 3 problems. 3 problems lie before us. Now, of course, we haven't come here tonight to just talk about problems. We've come, as Daryl has mentioned, to talk about possible solutions, and you know what I'm going to say the possible solution might be. We have a solution, a possible solution to these disproportionate funds. We have a possible solution to all of this weak returns. We have a solution to all of this massive government taxation. The answer in this particular speech is an Alberta Pension Plan. Quite obviously, in an Alberta Pension Plan, We would no longer be sending money with regards to these disproportionate payments. We wouldn't be sending billions more into that Eastern Hydra every year. We wouldn't be sending money to feed that Eastern machine. Government has far too much control as it is. The federal government has far too much control as it is over our finances. And if we have the opportunity to regain some of that in this province we love, to regain some of the control over our finances in this province we love, we have a moral obligation to do so, and we're going to do so. Secondly, with the returns. Alberta, because of our demographics, is right now in the position to either, with its own pension plan, maintain contribution rates and increase payouts for seniors, or decrease contribution rates and maintain the current payouts for seniors. As for myself, I am in a position, I am of the conviction that we should decrease contribution rates and maintain payouts. Because think of, for example, a scenario where you as an individual, not a married couple, but an individual, save $1,000 per year under an Alberta pension plan, which is a very real and probable possibility. Suppose that you saved $1,000 from this new plan every year, and you took that $1,000, and you invested that $1,000 year after year after year for 40 years. Suppose rate of return, an average rate of maybe 8% or something along those lines. At the end of your 40 years, when it comes time to retire, you as an individual will have amassed $370,000 in wealth. All of that would otherwise be lost to Ottawa, to the CPP. But if you have that saving, you can invest it, and then of course if your spouse invested, that's almost $800,000 to be used by you as you wish, instead of government handing you out a check every month. For what, $750, $800 on average? The difference is stunning. And finally, once again, I am of the conviction that we do not treat seniors properly in this country. We do not treat our seniors well enough in this country, and one of the first steps to fixing that problem is ensuring they have ample income and ample money to live on in their older years. That means no tax. That means no tax on an Alberta pension plan payout on pension checks. So then, the path before us is quite clear. As I mentioned before, the federal government has far too much control as it is. They have far too much leverage over this province as it is. But we have before us right now an opportunity to gain back, to regain that leverage, to take back what's ours, to take back what's ours from Ottawa, to release so much leverage, so much power that they exercise over us right now, and instead bring it back home. This Alberta Pension Plan is critical. This Alberta Pension Plan is necessary, and it is one of the foundational steps in guaranteeing the rights and the freedoms and the dignities that all Albertans deserve. Thank you.
Okay, so you literally only needed 5 minutes. So you're going to have to whip through a whole bunch of slides that he's not going to use and get yourself all the way to the part where it says help.
Yes.
Right?
At the very end.
Where, like, we missed all these slides. He explained
Yes.
what he just told you in 5 minutes. Tanner, when I look at seniors and I talk to them, there's a lot of fear.
Yeah, so much fear.
When we talk about pension money, it's important. I can't imagine how tight, well, my wife and I have a small business that people come and buy groceries. We literally see seniors shopping with a calculator. So we know that the benefit isn't enough, particularly in these Trudeau-induced inflationary times. So, is it possible that the Alberta Pension Plan could increase seniors' benefit by 20%?
Oh, So much of this depends on, the answer is yes, of course an Alberta Pension Plan increases seniors' benefits, without a doubt. There's no question about that, and it increases future generations' benefits. Absolutely. Now, we are right now, of course, looking at numbers. One of those big numbers includes the payout that comes from the CPP, should Alberta choose to start its own pension plan. What percentage of assets are we, as Albertans, owed? Now, of course, as you know, there are going to be a variety of interpretations as to how much Alberta is owed. No one questions that we're owed money. No one questions that we're owed billions and billions of dollars. The lowest assessment that I've seen thus far is $120 billion. LifeWorks is saying, what, $350 billion. And so the measure that, or of those assets, how much assets Alberta receives, will vary the numbers a little bit as to what the benefit for Albertans looks like. But it certainly gives Albertans benefits, no matter what that number is, whether it's $120 billion or $350 billion. I am of the conviction that it's closer to $350 billion when you think about how much Alberta has contributed over the last how many years. When you think about the fact that because Alberta is younger, so much more of our pension money goes to savings instead of paying out seniors, as it is in other provinces, and so on and so on. But as I mentioned before, with those lower contributions, right, the benefits are, when you invest that money which you've saved, are so unbelievably high that the possibilities are borderline endless. I'm so excited.
Sometimes people forget something called the liability, unfunded pension liability. I saw an estimate that this was $1.4 trillion. And the number that I saw that was actually invested is $556 billion. That's what they say on paper, whether it's actually there depending on the investment that they made. So if you have this unfunded liability that's $1.4 trillion, and Alberta's paying 53% of the benefits, wouldn't it be the time to get ourselves out from under that potential liability?
So, here's the way the CPP works. That's a good question. The CPP is what's called a pay-as-you-go system. That means as much money as the CPP brings in every year, it pumps it out to seniors. It saves only a few $billion from all of the payments that come from the provinces, except Quebec, of course, because they have their own plan. It saves only a few $billion to invest. But we have right now, in the country, an aging population. More and more individuals across the country are going to be collecting their CPP very soon. That means that the obligations, the payouts that are owed to upcoming seniors is starting to turn, or eclipse is more accurate, it's starting to eclipse the amount of money we're paying into the pension every year. So, for the moment, what is the pension going to do? Well, they're going to take from the assets that they've invested in to pay out all of those extra seniors that have now started collecting their pension. But the chunk that that CPP has to take from the assets every year is growing. So Hunter and I were doing research yesterday. Hunter, what was the number by 2050? It was 16% of asset investment income, right?
Yeah, 35.
And up to 35% of investment income by 2100 is going to be used for paying out pensioners, which is an unbelievably high number.
So Bernie Madoff had a thing. And he went to jail. They called it a Ponzi scheme. But by definition, the Canada Pension Plan for Albertans is a Ponzi scheme. Because you have to pay money in order to have enough money coming out to the pension plan. This is one of the things I think people have a real misnomer. It's not an RRSP. It's not that. It's pay as you go. So it's insurance, it's actually social welfare.
Yes, that's most accurate. I would say it far more looks like an insurance policy or a social welfare policy compared to a pension policy. That's a great way of describing it.
We're going to get to some questions in just a second, but there's an action that I need you to do. So if we can go ahead a couple slides here. So this is a room of action, and this is the part where I need you to take out your phone. So take out your phone, everyone take out your phone. I never do this, by the way. I never allow the phone out, but I even used it 3 times tonight. So I'm kind of giddy over the whole thing. Let's advance to the next slide. I need you to take a picture of these email addresses that you're about to see here. Take a photo. And just to be clear, the top one is Eric's email, calgary.lougheed@assembly.ab.ca. The next one is Shane's, Black St. Anne. Notice all the E's in there, don't get it wrong, at Parkland. Next one's Miles. Miles has got the easiest one, so if you can't remember any of them, remember Miles. Let's go to the next slide. There's Jennifer at the top. Jackie, lovely. Jackie sends her regards. She's the MLA for Camrose, and she wanted to be here tonight. She's actually watching live. And down at the bottom there you see Danielle Smith, the Premier. Keep in mind, we need you to send an email to each of these individuals, one at a time. Don't send it to one and CC the others. Okay? Yes, you can cut and paste. If you need help, Rick will write you an email. The point being is that in the offices of the constituency associations, they receive 8 4s. Yes, let's support the Alberta APP. And they see 13 against. See a problem there? And it's not that conservatives don't care, it's just that we like to sit on our hands to keep them warm. But this group, what I want to see happen tomorrow, when these MLAs go into their offices, I want them to see your emails. I want them to see that this group can activate and can send an email. Keep it short. I support an Alberta Pension Plan. I'm not exactly sure where it's going to go, but I'd like to get to the next step. That's what you need to say. Don't bore them with your dissertation. Okay? Don't bore them with your problems. Don't talk about canker sores or bunions. Please don't. If you need to, send it to rachel.notley@assembly.ab.ca. If you want to talk bunions or addictions or anything like that. So let's go to the next slide. So it's really important that you take action. And you're going to have to take action on 2 things tonight. The first one here is the Canada Pension Plan. Tanner will be here after to answer any individual questions. It's likely you're going to have some. His brother can answer equal number of questions, Hunter. But it's important that you get over the fear. And so all of the emails that you sent us with questions, let's just deal with the Q&A right now, because there's some interesting questions. So, there's a couple, Gwen and Cliff, that we introduced earlier. They drove here all the way from Medicine Hat. And to ask this question: could a new APP be available to all Albertans, including farmers, housewives, waiters, small business owners, etc.? You realize that Canada Pension Plan isn't available to a whole bunch of people, right? It's small business owners. If you own it, you can't be in it. If you're a waiter, you're not in it because you're living on tips. If you're a housewife or a farmer or a domestic engineer of any type, you're not included, okay? But is it possible that an APP could be all-inclusive for everybody?
Oh, certainly. Why not? We have, again, in this province, a generous demographic where our workers, our citizens in this province are younger on average than other provinces. We work more than average on other provinces, and we're wealthier on average than other provinces. And so those factors combine to, as far as I'm concerned, create a possibility where you can extend an Alberta Pension Plan to a variety of individuals, right? Absolutely. The housewife one in particular interests me, right? We live in a country where we do not venerate the housewife as they ought to be venerated. That is the highest career.
One of the points that was always overlooked is that the former finance minister of Canada's company, Bill Moreau, was the company that actually said that Alberta owned 53% of the CPP IP, right? It wasn't like we had a conservative think tank do that.
No.
It was a former Liberal finance minister.
That's right. It wasn't Fraser Institute or another, libertarian think tank that created those, worked out the calculations from the CPP Act and created those numbers. It was LifeWorks. You're absolutely right.
Let's go to the next question. This is Valerie from Highwood. Can Alberta have an APP like the Saskatchewan Pension Plan?
That's another good question. Okay, so the Canadian Pension Plan Act stipulates that if a province is going to leave the Canadian Pension Plan, then it has to do so with its own pension plan that guarantees similar or better benefits and is comparable to the CPP. So, for the purposes of leaving the Canadian Pension Plan, we have to abide by a few of the same rules, or more than a few to be entirely honest, that the CPP does, so that we're actually allowed to leave it. But there is absolutely nothing that says we couldn't, as a province, create another pension plan, like the Saskatchewan Pension Plan, which allows people to opt in if they so choose, and go forth that way.
It's super flexible too. So they call it the SPP. You can go to saskpension.ca and look it up. But basically it's an RRSP that is managed by the government. No, it's managed by fund holders. And it has an 8% return. They charge 1% of the 8 to manage the fund, and they return 7% to the investors. And being involved with it, like there's every combination under the rainbow that you can do.
Yeah.
You can have just yourself, you can have small business, you can have a housewife, you can have employer-employee benefits. It works within the context of your RRSP contribution, but it's another pension.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
And it dawns on me why this is important. If you're a union worker, how many pensions do you think they get?
More than one.
So you'd have your, let's say it's the ATA. They're my favorite target this week. So your pension is managed by AIMCO, the Alberta Management something.
Alberta Investment
Management
Corporation, yeah.
Nice acronym. But more importantly, people have to realize that the unions are crapping on AIMCO as a potential manager of the fund, yet their own funds are managed by AIMCO.
Yes, and more so, those union members, or the representatives, tell AIMCO what to invest in.
Oh, so they make bad decisions.
Right, right. So, for example, and this is a real example, if a particular pension fund that's being managed by AIMCO wants to invest a portion of their pool in, say, renewables, then AIMCO has to do so. Right? One of the tenets of a new Alberta pension plan has to be that the investment manager is totally separated from government in every aspect.
And that's possible.
Absolutely possible.
Let's see. When the power went out in Lac St. Anne, you were getting, let's see, the grid has 30% renewables, I think, if I saw the grid number right. Did I get it right? And the renewables were generating 0.1% of their capacity. So when it's cold, we need extra electricity, but the windmills and the solar panels don't work. And when it's hot, the windmills and solar panels don't work. So we need air conditioning. So when we need it, it's not there. I think this is a great NDP policy. They should stick with it. All right, let's go to the next question. So Marcus from Varsity, you notice I'm moving the people around who sent me the questions? Could the new APP be an opt-in, opt-out plan with tiered options, like insurance?
So this is another good question. For the moment, I am focused only on leaving the Canadian Pension Plan and starting our own Alberta Pension Plan, because that's the first step. Now again, if the province is going to do so, it has to abide by the rules of the Canadian Pension Plan Act. We can leave the pension plan today if we wanted to, right? If the Premier and her government decided to announce today or tomorrow that we were leaving the pension plan, the Canadian Pension Plan, she has every legal right to do so.
So she, just because of Bill 2 though, she's going to have a referendum.
Right, she has a referendum. Yes, that's correct. But at any rate, you know, theoretically, she could do so today. Now, if we were to say, we're going to start our own APP, leaving the CPP, and we're going to give people an opt-in, opt-out option, the feds would say, no, you can't leave. You can't leave because you're not abiding by the rules for leaving the CPP. You have to first abide by those rules if we're going to emancipate ourselves from the Canadian Pension Plan and start our own Alberta Pension Plan. Now, you know, then the government can have discussions later, but for the moment, that's the rule.
How long do we have to stick with the rules? Like if I'm Trudeau, how long do I have to stick with the rules? And do I have to go by the rules?
Right. So
I'm just curious. I don't understand government sometimes.
Right. So of course, if Darrell doesn't follow the rules, he goes to jail. Right. If Trudeau doesn't follow the rules,
he goes to India.
Right.
Okay. So Louis from Fish Creek asked this question: will an APP affect the federal old age security or guaranteed income supplement? Because that's always implied that there's going to be holdbacks.
Right. And of course, they're totally separate. Right. The OAS, GIS, and CPP are entirely separate institutions, for lack of a better word, in the country. Totally separate. You know, even officially, the position is the CPP is entirely separate of government. Now, I think that's a dubious claim to make, considering the federal minister appoints the board members for the Canadian Pension Plan Investing Board. But at any rate, it's supposed to be publicly an institution that's completely separated from government and completely separated from OAS and the Guaranteed Income Supplement.
Because they're funded differently. So CPP is funded by the money that the employer and the employee puts into the pension plan, whereas old age security and guaranteed income supplement is paid out of general revenue.
Right, they're different. Yeah,
so
that's correct.
And so not even Trudeau could make an argument that they're the same.
Not even, well, Trudeau might, knowing Trudeau, but not even Trudeau, yes, not even Trudeau can make the argument.
Okay, Cliff from Calgary Lougheed, and for those of you who know Cliff, you'll be amazed that I got his question on one slide. Could the APP be individualized like insurance, and can it have a death benefit for the estate?
So that's another good question. That's similar to the one we answered a few ago, right? Again, to start, an Alberta pension plan has to be very similar in its structure to the Canadian Pension Plan. If it's not, the feds have a right under the Canadian Pension Plan Act to say, no, you can't leave. Now, of course, that Canadian Pension Plan Act is unbelievably vague. It's very vague. That's so typical of government legislation and government bills and so on, to be vague, right? If you build a house, you build it precisely, because if you don't, you know that the house is going to fall. But if government builds a house called a country, they make it as vague as possible so they can reshape it whenever they want to fix their or to achieve their objectives and their ideals. But this particular section is clear. To start, we have to have something similar. What happens after, there's nothing in the CPP Act that talks about it, right? That's intentionally vague. Now, the death benefit, that's another good question, because of course, what happens tragically if your spouse dies young right now? Do you see the returns on their CPP contributions? Right, it's unbelievable. First of all, it's an unbelievably complicated calculation to figure out what each individual is owed. But more than that, you and I know it's not fair. Could you imagine if you would put your money with your spouse into an investing firm, your investments, and then tragically your spouse dies at 65, and the investment manager says, well, money's gone. It's gone back into the pool. It'd be nonsense. And so I see absolutely no reason, considering, once again, Alberta's demographics, Alberta's wealth, the fact that we will receive a transfer from Ottawa, what assets, There'll be a negotiation, but we will receive a transfer of assets. Again, not even Trudeau could claim that it's zero. All of those factors combine to create the possibility, the probability of creating a much more fair pension plan for widows and widowers.
So for our NDP friends who are here, let's be clear. We're saying that we would have an Alberta pension plan that would pay our seniors more. We'd have an Alberta pension plan that could have a survivor death benefit larger than $2,500. And maybe even, here's an idea, just spitballing, we could have it so that young people, after they've vested after 10 years, they've invested for 10 years, could take out a sum of money and use it as a down payment to make housing more affordable. What about that?
Right, like there's nothing, so many things irritate me with government and with activists, but there is nothing that irritates me more when I hear the argument that the UCP is in danger, or that you're in danger of the UCP stealing your pension and your CPP. That is such nonsense, right? That is such nonsense. It is impossible for a government, for a provincial government, to say, we're out of CPP and then take away all the benefits and completely axe the system. Again, the CPP Act doesn't allow for that. If that were to happen, the feds again would say, no, you can't do it. So when we hear our friends at whatever rally they're at talk about the danger of government, of this provincial government stealing the plan, stealing your pension, hands off our pension, right, the answer is that's total nonsense. That's absolute nonsense. It's not allowed under the Act.
So we have the party that's considered the party of small business, economic development, growth, good fiscal management, saying, hey, we'll make sure your money's going to be there. We've got the party that spends crazily on everything and not really needing to balance the budget because it'll balance itself. And we want to leave our money with them. Like, I don't understand how anybody can be convinced that leaving your money in the hands of Justin Trudeau is a good idea.
Yeah.
Like, to me, that's the basics. Now, let's go to the slide. Okay, for those of you who are slow on the uptick and didn't hear me, right here. I didn't see you take your camera up. Okay, thank you. Be sure you have a picture of this slide and this slide, because this is essential to show support to caucus, the Premier, and your MLA. Now, somebody says, my MLA is orange. Tell them you love the APP. Because here's what's going to happen. 10 if you can. The point is that if our caucus knows that information, this is when you CC a government member, this is the time to CC somebody. That, let's just say you CC'd Eric or say Shane. And Janice Irwin gets up on the other side of the house and says, I have never heard one Albertan who has ever been on side with the APP. Ooh. Well, Miss Irwin, I've got an email here from your constituent, Lois. And she said, da-da-da-da-da-da. Oh, well, it's only one. Good that you brought that up, Janice. Here's another one, and another one, and another one. You see the point. We need to give our legislators ammunition, information. We got to show them that we're on their side like a big blue wave. You guys heard me use that phrase at the AGM, the big blue wave? You are the big blue wave. Give it up for Tanner Hnidey, everybody.